Thank you. It's very nice to have all of you here. I apologize for the slight delay. I was in an IEP meeting with the parent through Zoom, and the parent and the parent's attorney were arguing with each other. So we were just, as a district, I'm a district representative on this one, just sitting back and listening to them argue. And I couldn't hear really well, but we met with the parent attorney yesterday and said, we're going to present this. Started presenting that. The parent said, I don't think that's a good idea. So many of you may have lived this, but that was what I was just doing just a few minutes ago. But there was also discussion up here, how many devices do we need in order to participate in a meeting? I was zooming through one iPad, reading the IEP in another, on the phone with the attorney through another, listening through AirPods. It's amazing, all these little devices that we have to do. And yet I still have to type it up later and get it out to everyone. So yeehaw, it's a process just continues, and so it's fun. All right, so today, some of you may have been participants in sessions with me yesterday. And one of the sessions I talked about extensively was just changing your attitude towards things and changing your mindset. That was the one on trauma. And some of you were talking about you couldn't get into some of the sessions yesterday. If you read through the notes of anything that I presented yesterday and you have any questions, do not hesitate to reach out to me. A number of you did last night. I was shooting emails back and forth because I had way too much sugar. Good God, I had too much sugar. We went to Crumbled Cookies last night. What the hell? Those people are printing money. So yeah, it's amazing with all like 14 people back there working, but it was really interesting. But yeah, I had way too much sugar, and I just had some sugar here, and you guys are going to pay the price. So, all right, so I just to let you know where we're going with this. But I share this with you, again, if you have any questions about that, any questions about anything that I'm presenting today, the nature, as many of you are aware, and this is the first thing, is basically the nature of adult learning is you're going to think of something Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday next week. Do not hesitate to reach out to me. I'm happy to, whatever I can do to provide you assistance, provide you information, provide you slides, like I did for you last night. Whatever I can do not hesitate to reach. And this is actually really good advice, because what I said to I was in the private chat with the director of special education on the IEP meeting there, is set up a meeting with the parent 4 days from now. 4 or 5 days from now, because as the parent has processed something, follow through and see if there's any additional questions or information that the parent has. So as a part of a standard practice, just 4 or 5 days later, set up a time to talk, call, Zoom, whatever with the parent, see if they have any additional questions, concerns, issues. It's better to do that then than to wait. They may not have anything, but it's a good faith effort on your part to keep them informed and keep them part of the process. So the director of special education said, I've never thought about that. I don't really want to talk to this parent. I said, you're going to. Call this parent on Monday and say, is there anything at the meeting we had last week about what's going on, anything we need to pay attention to? But just little advice like this. Same thing, guys, goes with you. Anything from the notes from yesterday, or I'm going to push a lot of documents out on you. A lot of things that hopefully will be beneficial to help you meet the needs of the kids with whom you work with and the teachers with you are working. Yeah, I'm going to push it. If any of these don't make sense or they don't work for you, shoot me an email. I'll send you a different copy that works for you, whatever version that does things with, just to make your life better. Do not hesitate to reach out to me. So pay attention to my email address. Though I'm on a new plan this new school year, I only check my email 3 times a day, as opposed to in May, it was 87 times a day, and that was probably way less than it was, because once I started tracking how many times a day, I stopped checking it so frequently. So yeah, so we're down to 3 times a day. So I'm working on this. But okay, so I'm going to start moving through things pretty quickly on this one. Okay, Mitch Yell, many of you had the experience of working with him. He and I have a book coming out in just like 2-3 weeks. We're pretty excited about this one. It was a case review of all the major cases in 2020. We're going to do this again for next year for 2021. We're going to start doing this on an annual basis. We're a little late on this one because we had some production problems from our part, not the publisher, but much of the things, what steers the discussion we have on this is going to come from this and things like this. So I'm looking forward to this one. Another book, and I showed this to many of you yesterday. I do not get any money or royalties from this book, and we're trying to get information out there. This is for school board members, about what school board members need to know about special education. The joke when we signed the contract was that it was going to be in large print with a lot of pictures. Okay? I wrote this with the State Director of Special Education from Montana. She and I have done a lot of writing together. We a great working relationship on that. She and I did a speaking tour in Guam not too long ago, and so we travel together, speak together. It works out really well. But this is it's not very expensive and it's not very thick, because the school board member is not going to read this, but school board members are often making decisions and making all sorts of discussions on this that are having some problems with what's going on. Now, Tara asked me for some notes that I have on this. I have a PowerPoint that I put together for the present to school boards about like top 10 things they need to know. If you get a copy of these books and you're going to be presenting to your school board, shoot me an email. I'll send you a copy of the PowerPoint. Okay, if that'll help you. You take my name off of it, by the way, when you use it. All right, take my name off it and put your name on it prominently and say, I've developed this, and change wherever it says to Pennsylvania, it says Indiana. Just that's those three things, you're good. But if that'll help you to get the information out to school board members, because they truly are, they're sometimes a major stumbling block for implementation of services, because they don't understand suspension. They don't understand the fact that we have to continue to provide services. And sometimes even when a kid has problems, we're going to send the kid, why don't we just kick this kid out? No, we're going to send this kid to a more expensive place. What do you mean we're sending this kid to a more expensive place? Or my favorite, what we get from some is, this person's never going to be a taxpayer in the future, so why are we spending so much money on this person now? Many of you have probably heard this, and I'm moving on from this. Okay, things like this. All right. So again, this is published by the Council for Exceptional Children. I think the state of Alabama just bought one for every school board member. New Jersey, I think, just bought one, so we're pretty excited. Guam for all 9. So we're pretty excited. Just to let you have this, there are more school board members nationwide than there are principals. Okay? There are 93,000 school board members. There's 64,000 principals. And why is this? Where there's a lot of the average size school district in the United States is about 1,000 students. They have often 2 or 3 principals, but they have a full assembly of 9 school board members. So that's where the difference is. The large school districts, my dad's executive director of the Urban Superintendents Association of America. He thinks he knows what's going on. He has no clue. All right, things like this. Okay, all right, okay. All right, so stuff that I've made available for you. And there's quite a bit of stuff, and there's some good stuff out there. Some of this is reading stuff that I recommend this to you, but this is stuff that will help you in doing your job, and I'm just going to walk you through this. I emailed all this to Marcy the other day. I think it's all available, and so just kind of walk you through what's there. This is stuff that will help you get information out to your teachers, to your staff, just to kind of make it through the day and understand what's going on. The first one, and this is an oldie but a goodie, but it's a really interesting read, and it truly is an interesting read. It's the perspective of Amy Rowley. From Amy Rowley is the individual who is part of the Supreme Court case from 1982 from the Hendrick Hudson School District in Peekskill, and she talks about what it was like to be the focus of the case. She has a PhD from the University of Wisconsin. She's a professor of deaf ed in the California State University system, and which shouldn't surprise you, because remember, when she was young, she had an IQ between 135 and 142, depending on the test, things like this. But she talks about what it was like to be the focus of the case and be part of this. It's really, truly an interesting read. And it's an easy read, but it's from her perspective. One of the parts of the case is they brought in an interpreter in for her at all times, and she did not look at the interpreter. I don't know how much you know about interpreting, but in order for it to work, you actually have to look at the interpreter. It doesn't go around corners. We found that out one time. But she did not like to look at the interpreter because the interpreter was a big, tall person wearing all black, and she was kind of scared of that person. So it's just little things like this, just her personal perspective. It's a good read. Second thing we sent you is the Endrew Supreme Court decision. And I know Mitch has talked about it. We sat next to each other at the case years ago. But it's the Endrew Supreme Court case decision. It's a good read. And I mean this. And I know some of you are like, I'd rather read something that's exciting. This is actually, whether you like the Supreme Court or not, Chief Justice John Roberts, he's a good author. He's a good writer. He's a very good writer. And so he basically, it's interesting to read something of which you know a lot about. You know a lot about that, and read their perspective on this and read what's going on, because you'll see lines in there like, we need to get kids to work to their progress, or what we expect of them, those kinds of things. It's just interesting terms. Read through it. It's an easy read. It's only about 12 pages. But read through it. It really is, it's worth your time. It really is worth your time. Kind of bookmarking Rowley from 1982 and Endrew from 2017. So keep that in mind. The third thing we have up there is the U.S. Department of Education. I helped work on this. The U.S. Department of Education put a frequently asked questions on the Enders Supreme Court case. And what's important about this is they have really good information about the fact that it's not just academics we need to focus on. And this is one thing I was highlighting yesterday, but I want to highlight this again today, is we too often with kids pay solely attention to academics. You also need to pay attention to functional performance and behavior issues, because this is what trips up a lot of the kids. Like the IEP meeting I was just on, the kid is known for hitting, kicking, biting teachers, broke the teacher's clavicle 2 years ago. So they're afraid, this really small district is afraid about having him come back, so we're trying to figure out what can we do to provide a support for this child, things like this. Academics, he's doing okay, but that's not the concern. The concern is like when he rides the bus, the van, he's attacked, he's a 9-year-old boy, he's attacked the van driver multiple times. So he sits in the far back in a special seat to keep him there, and they have someone sitting behind him. And he was at last year, and this is why I was involved. Is his bus ride was 1 hour and 45 minutes one way, and they wouldn't let him hold anything because what would he do with the stuff? He would throw it at the bus driver. So he wanted to take Game Boy, but he threw it at the bus driver or threw it out the window. So he has to sit there for 1 hour and 45 one way. Okay. I don't know what you do for 3.5 hours each day, but hopefully you're doing something more exciting. Okay? So his bus ride this year is 20 minutes, and he is giddy because he wants just to sleep in a little bit. So we're working on these kinds of things, but very real things. Read that. The fourth thing up there are IRIS modules. And this, what I'm talking about this is the U.S. Department of Education, after the Enders Supreme Court case, decided it needed training modules to train teachers and principals relating to what is meant by an appropriate education. And so they hired Mitch and me to do these. We wrote 2 different modules on this, one more for teachers, one more for principals. They're free for you to use. They're absolutely free. And so what we do is, I duly recommend, if you type in Iris Center IEP modules, you'll find them. They'll pop up. One is listed as IEP 01, one is listed as IEP 02. They're really easy to find. But the Iris Center also has a whole bunch of training modules that you can use for professional development within your district. They're all free. They're all good. I can't recommend them enough. I can't recommend them enough. You don't need to hire other outside experts to come in and do all these trainings. You can do these. It'll save you a ton of money, and they're good. They're good. And the IEP modules that Mitch and I did, there were some of the most difficult things that I've had to write because they had 7 layers of U.S. Department of Education lawyer vetting. And the picky little crap that they came up with was amazing. But they've got the U.S. Department of Education stamp of approval on this. They're now being mandated, and I think like the one for principals, I understand is being used for all principals in 23 states and 2 territories for what they need to know about working as IEPs. And it's good stuff. I'm really proud. And they're free. They're completely free. Get them out there. So my recommendation is like for you, for what to use, like if for professional development, is have your principals do that module. And then as they're doing it, come up with questions. And then when you meet with them like a week or 2 later. Remember adult learning? Meet with them a week or 2 later, and you just go through their questions about this, like how we do it specifically in our district. Answer their questions. You don't need to bring anyone from the outside to do this. You've got good stuff there. You understand and answer their questions. You understand what you need as a part of this. It would be a great professional development opportunity for them, and it's free. And you can get good stuff out of there. They have a wonderful amount of other modules on there on behavior management, progress monitoring, working with paraprofessionals, working with parents. The one they just have popped up not too long ago on dealing with loss of education from COVID, things like this. They're all free. Because many of you, and I'll talk about this later, many of you are dealing with emergency certified teachers or newly hired paraprofessionals. I mean, the IEP meeting was just on. The kid is supposed to go, we in Pennsylvania start schools tomorrow. Yeah, you guys are practiced. You're well into this year. We're newly getting this thing. But the parents are asking for a new paraprofessional who's going to start with this kid tomorrow, who's got all sorts of behavior training module, understand behaviors, understands safe crisis management techniques, all these different things. We're lucky if we can get somebody warm. I'm really serious, and this poses a problem because the town I live in, And I said this to you yesterday, the town I live in has 10 large Amazon warehouses. And I checked again this morning, $23 an hour to work at the Amazon warehouse. Okay? I don't know if you're paying your aides $23 an hour, go for it. Go for it. You're not going to have a problem getting aides or paraprofessionals. But we're having severe problems. We're counseling as many of these kids who absolutely need a support, need something, and we can't get anyone as a part of this. And we're having severe problems with this. And so when we get someone, we're just grateful. We're just grateful. So they use the Iris Center modules to provide additional trainings for them and supports for them as a part of this to get them the information. Because we're just desperate. We're just desperate. And I said this before. It's like my daughter, she's working on her master's in special education. She's working in an autism classroom with kids with pretty significant needs. She's taken up all of her BCBA classes. Arizona State, if you, I can vouch for them. I don't get any money for saying this. It was a good program. She learned a ton. She really did. I was really, really pleased with what she learned. But she says, I want to work with kids with autism with significant behavior problems, Dad. When I get my master's degree, I'm going to have trouble getting a job. Do you think you can call your friends to help me get a job? That was my conversation with her Sunday night. I said, honey, I think you're going to be okay. She did two sports. We need to talk about your daughter. She did two sports in college, track and cross country, and she said, I want to coach. Do you think someone would hire me if I want to coach and work with kids with autism? I think you're going to be okay. So she said, you sure? Because you would call your friends for me if you wanted. No, shut up, kid. All right, go. So anyway, these Iris modules are wonderful, and I truly recommend them for you. The same thing with the main one just for teachers. Again, there's two. The same thing for professional development. Have the teachers in elementary school take this, go through that one, write their questions, and you come in and just a week later and just take their questions. Their ticket in the door is to complete this module. Free stuff, folks, and it works. And it works, and it has the U.S. Department of Education's stamp of approval on this. Things like this. The next one is a 504 accommodations guide. And we don't see a lot of this, but what we're seeing is a lot of people writing 504 plans who haven't had good training in this. And I'm not casting aspersions, please. I'm not saying anything negative about this, but we often have school counselors who are doing this, and their program is huge. In order to be a school counselor, they have so much coursework that they have to do. But writing 504 plans should be like a whole course, but they don't get that. So this is a document that talks, the first 8 pages is step-by-step how to write a 504 plan. The last 35 or so pages is what I surveyed is with the districts I consult with. What are the most problems that you have with kids eligible for 504? And we identified those disabilities. We wrote a sample of what the disability is like, 3 valid websites if you want to go for more information, and 25 to 30 possible accommodations specific for that disability. And it's not perfect. I'm well aware it's not perfect. It doesn't have food allergies. As someone with food allergies, you would think I would have included that, but I did not. I'm not that smart. So it's interesting about this, but it has many of the disabilities. So what we can do is, I've seen school counselors now, they understand now how the process of how it works. They go to that page. They read that one page. They're now in the ballpark to talk with the parents about that disability. They only have to read that one page before they walk into the 504 meeting and understand what's going on. And it's working really well, and it's being used by a lot of states and on 2 territories to help write 504s. So use it right now, because Mitch and I are going to turn it into a book, and we're not going to pass it out free anymore. So just use it now while you can. But get it out, so it's keep it updated. We're going to keep it updated about this. But it's a good thing. The next thing, you absolutely should have on your shelf a copy of the pre-referral intervention manual. If you don't have a copy on your shelf, whoa, good thing you showed up today. We're going to get you a copy. Okay? If you go to the Amazon and you type in pre-referral intervention manual, the book is anywhere from $85 to $100. That's the 4th edition of the book. We have a PDF of the 3rd edition that we can get to you. Okay? So it's there, things like this. I will deny having ever met you if you say I gave it to you. Okay? But it works really well. And what is good about this book? First, this book has no exclamation points. It has no pictures. It has no narrative. But what it has is lists of interventions. So suppose, for instance, you have a kid who is throwing a tantrum. And those of you who understand tantrums, I talked about tantrums yesterday. A good tantrum is a work of art. Okay? It is truly a work of art. things like this. But what do you do for a kid with a tantrum? What it does, it doesn't tell you the theory of tantrums. It has 50 suggestions on how to deal with a kid who has a tantrum. Some are for really young kids or some are for older kids, but at least not all 50 will work, but you're going to get 10 nuggets of wisdom that would be beneficial to you that will help out a teacher in a situation. You don't have to use the Google. You go there and you've got good information. So what's interesting, I consult with a lot of districts. I'm not doing that again until tomorrow afternoon, so I'm on a break. What's interesting about this is what I do is when I pull up, I think what they want me to do is pull up in a minivan and have me take all the bad kids away. No, what I go in, I say, I've sent you a copy of the pre-referral intervention manual. Tell me what activities you've done to solve the problems on this kid. Because too many often the districts will do is they'll do one intervention and then they'll stop. It doesn't work, we're going to stop here, no more. No, I want to see multiple cases of interventions and try what's going on. Because the case I was telling you about, this, I was on the IEP meeting at noon today. The district has a fallback plan where they're going to send the kid in a week if it doesn't work. And they've already said, we're going to have, they've already arranged the transportation to start in a week for this kid to work. No, actually, that's not the process. Show me what you're going to do for this kid to work for a week so this kid can be successful. What's step one? What's step two? What's step three that you're doing as a part of this? I share this with you because we too often negate trying multiple things. I would love it. I would absolutely love it if the first intervention we do for a child works every time. I had 2 kids of my own who were teenagers for all of their teenage years, by the way. Okay? All of both. And what's interesting about this is both are now in their 20s, and both of them now call me for advice on a regular basis. I'm way smarter than I was just 5 years ago. Okay? Some of you with teenagers, you can get there. Good luck. All right? Okay? Good luck there, Tara. But what's interesting about this I'm aware of this, but both my kids now call me for advice, and it's wonderful. But for a while there, they didn't. Keep that in mind. Okay, next. Next thing, a piece for gen ed teachers. What gen ed teachers need to do, because one of the big problems that you guys have, one of the big problems that you have in getting information for finalizing forms for IEPs, evaluations, is getting statements from gen ed teachers. Tracking those gen ed teachers do. We do, and I speak as a person in higher education, we do I think the technical term is a piss poor job of training gen ed teachers about what they need to do to be a participant in an IEP meeting and writing what's going on. So not my students, but it's interesting so what do we have here is I have a statement and a questionnaire of what they need to do as a part of this. Because they shut down, they don't know what you want. And you need to get their information. You need to get their information. You need to get information from all the individuals who work with this child. So because when I come in for litigation, I leave no stone unturned. I want to know all the individuals who work with this kid. So I make sure we interview the bus driver. We make sure we interview the music teacher, the PE teacher, the librarian, anybody who works with this child. What do they say about this child? So we have really good information about how this child functions compared to other kids in the classroom. That is vital as a part of the process. So it's a gen ed piece. It was part of a book. I did a book for ASCD called A Teacher's Guide to Special Education. It was ASCD's first book on special ed about 6 years ago with Jen Klein, the director of special ed from Montana. And so we did that together and worked really well. But it's just basically a cut and paste from that. And now I think the sample I gave to you says, I think September 21, 2021, which is a day in the future at vernal equinox. I'm excited, but it's autumnal equinox, but I'm really excited about that day will occur. Okay? But use that. Get that out to people. Okay? Next. Mitch Yell and I, we co-edited the journal Teaching Exceptional Children. We did a special issue on legally compliant IEPs that came out last summer, not this summer. We sent those pieces to you to get out to individuals about this. It's free. We took that information and turned it into a book that's coming out on the order from. We haven't seen a final copy. It's supposed to be out by the end of this month on legally compliant IEPs. So that's what we do in our spare time is we hang out and write things. But it's amazing. He and I Zoom multiple times a week, but we saw each other for the first time face-to-face in a year and a half yesterday. It was just really nice. We both have lost about 30 pounds, and we're like, who are you? So it was really cool. So yeah, we both can bemoan the fact that our pants don't fit anymore. So there are worse things that can happen, right? So all I have is jeans now, right? And I'm wearing pants. I'm pretty excited. You may not be excited. I'm wearing. Yesterday was the first time I'd been face to face with a group in a year and a half. Okay, zooming like crazy, and I'm tired of it. Okay, all right, more. Wait, there's more. Okay. So from that book that he and I just worked on, it's an IEP book on legally compliant IEPs. Again, it's coming out at the end of this month. We have a timeline for teachers on what they need to know, what they need to do a month before an IEP meeting, 2 weeks before an IEP meeting, 1 week before an IEP meeting, a day before an IEP meeting, the morning of an IEP meeting, 5 days after an IEP meeting. Kind of walk through step by step, breaking it down, because teachers are not often taught that. They're saying you got to do an IEP, but we don't talk about it. It's a process of thinking about gathering the information, and step by step and step is a part of this. Again, if you can't find any of this information, shoot me an email. I'll make sure you get it as a Word document. You can tailor it to your district and things like this, but it helps really well. Okay. Second thing, a transportation questionnaire. Okay? This is a good one, because too often we neglect transportation as a part of IEP teams. Why I say this is we have all these kids who fail bus, and we do nothing to provide assistance for them. We really do nothing to provide assistance and provide supports for them, and we need to think about what we can do to be so that we can help them as much as possible. We focus solely on academics, but you need to focus on what we can do to provide appropriate transportation and things like this. So it's a questionnaire. Now, it dives deep into this. So one thing, and someone came up to me after the previous session and highlighted this for me, you need to make sure that you provide information to substitute bus drivers. Not just the regular bus drivers, because there's some kids on these buses who are nonverbal. Some of these kids who have assigned seats. Some of these kids on some of these special buses who are strapped into the bus. You need to make sure what would happen if the bus turns over? How are we going to get these kids out? Who's going to take the kid's device that goes from school to home or home to school? If there's not someone to meet the kid at the end of the day when you drop off the kid, what are the steps to take? Who's the backup plan? Where exactly do you drop off the kids? Okay? And what is the policy if the kid doesn't show? A variety of things like this. Why? I was involved in 2 bad cases. One where I used this story yesterday. The district had a policy: if you live within 1.5 miles, you walk to school, unless you used a wheelchair. Kid lived 1.25 miles from school, pretty significant needs related to autism. He was in 6th grade. His 8th grade sister walked him to and from school for about 6 months. She stayed late from school one day, sent him on his way home. He dropped a Pokemon card in the middle of the street, was hit by a truck and killed instantly. Okay? I worked on the parent side on that one to make sure that that never happened to another kid. That's why we developed this questionnaire. Second one is there was a private provider who drove a van to pick up this kid with pretty significant needs relating to autism. But the private provider, unbeknownst to us, had a rule that if the kid did not show up 4 days consecutively, that they would not go back on day 5. They just stopped going. And they didn't tell anybody about this rule. Okay? But for some reason, there was a miscommunication. They didn't know that the kid was out, going to be sick. Kid was sick for 4 days. On day 5, kid walked down a long driveway. No one came and picked him up. And for the next 4 hours, he wandered a neighborhood. Came home. Parents just thought, oh, he's home early. Okay? Day 2, he walks down there, goes dutifully to school. No one comes, picks him up. He wanders the neighborhood, broke into someone's house because he couldn't get into his own house because it was cold. And they found him curled up next to a dog in someone else's house. This is not where you should find kids with autism who should be in school. Luckily, he was curled up to a nice dog, things like this, but freaked out that family. That's not how we should find where kids are. So use this transportation questionnaire to stimulate thoughts and ideas as a part of this. And pay attention to this. We field tested in 5 different school districts and made sure that he's kind of affirmed all different parts of it are good, things like this. It's an appendix in the book, but it's something out there that will be beneficial to you. The last one is an aid questionnaire. Too often we assign aids to kids in kindergarten and we join them at the hip until they're high school. My favorite one was a kid with significant needs previously had significant needs relating to a seizure disorder, where the aide was supposed to be within 10 feet of him at all times. So the aide went with him to his high school prom. Okay? I don't know what another adult going with you to your high school prom, how that might have changed your attitude, who was within 10 feet of all times. Many of you probably would have been a much more positive experience. No, all right, that's fine. All right, that's good. All right. Others don't even want to go back and even think about high school. Don't come back to me here. All right, stop thinking about because it was not a positive experience for me at all. So I think the aid would have helped. So anyways, but we have to think about the aid. So it's a questionnaire whether a kid needs an aid. If yes, then we go to 3 different other questionnaires. Is it a behavioral aid? Is it a health aid, or is it an instructional aid? And what we can do with all constantly thinking about how we can potentially fade this aid, as opposed to just permanently assigning this person to be with this kid the rest of the child's life. So we have to think about this. Now, there's some kids who are going to need supports the rest of their lives. I don't dispute that. I will fight to make sure they get that. Okay? However, most of the times we don't necessarily need to do that. Okay? The last thing relates to dyslexia. Something that's rearing its head all over the nation right now. And I mean this very seriously. And there's 2 different parts to this that I want to talk about. The first part is that the Commonwealth of Virginia put out a training module that they require of all K-12 teachers and administrators. It's a module that it takes about an hour and a half to do, but you'll learn a lot about dyslexia. It's free. Other states have done this, but it's not free, or you have to log in from your state account, things like this. The Virginia Dyslexic Module, if you just type in Google, Virginia Dyslexic Module, you'll get it, but I think I've hyperlinked it in the information there. It's great information, and it's 98% of what things like this. It has some things relating to the Commonwealth of Virginia, the last little part at the end, but it's great information about dyslexia. So increasingly, as parents are asking for dyslexia identification, it gives you good information there. Get it out there, it's free. The second thing out there, and this is an interesting kind of twist from everything else. There was a movie made about kids with dyslexia and how to read. The movie's based outside of Columbus, Ohio. The movie, it's a YouTube video. It's only about 42 minutes long, but you'll learn a lot. I do highly recommend it. Okay, and so again, it's free on the YouTube. So it's got good information out there. But these are the things out there that can be beneficial to you and your team as they provide supports, because I'm pushing these. All this stuff is good, free stuff. It will hopefully help you meet the needs of the kids and help what's going on. Yes?
What's that one called? The one on YouTube?
I think it's Our Dyslexic Kids, but there's a link to it. Okay. And if you can't find it, shoot me an email and I'll send you the link. It's things like this. It's about 42 minutes long. And it's really good. It's really good and it interviews a lot of kids in secondary who had severe problems when they were in elementary, and talks about their attitudes towards life and their attitudes towards education, and with appropriate instruction, what can be done as a part of this. And so it's a good passive but learning activity that will make you think differently about them. Okay, I'm not pushing a certain reading program or anything about this. Just think broadly about what we can do to be of assistance to them. Okay, next. All right, changing gears rather dramatically. Okay, rather dramatically, okay? We're going to change gears. And what I want you to do as a part of this is I want you, when you think of special education litigation, this is the attitudinal change difference thing that I want you to pay attention to. I want you, when you're involved in special education litigation or complaints, I want you to now take a plane crash instead of a car crash approach. And I mean this literally, okay? How many of you have ever been in a car crash? Okay, lots of us. How many of you have been in a plane crash? Okay. There's the plane. Okay, there's a plane. It's a beauty. $175,000. I was not the pilot. This is 2 hours later. Okay. We hit a tree at 95 miles an hour. We were going 95 miles an hour. The tree wasn't going. Sorry, I apologize. The tree was fairly stationary. In fact, that's why we stopped. And we were 60 feet up in the tree, and we had to fall down to this. Okay? I was not the pilot. There's just 2 of us. We were going to look at the leaves. It was last October. Okay? We were going to look at the leaves. The leaves look exactly like they do from the ground. This is me after 4 weeks when I first got to sit up. I was in surgical intensive care for 4 weeks. I broke my sternum, cracked, because of the seat belts, 4 bones in my back, had a massive bruise pushing up against my heart. I was in surgical intensive care. Had a catheter. I'm sitting up for the first time in 4 weeks. Okay? You don't know how exciting it is to sit up. Okay? I went home about a week later. I was a fall risk, so someone had to hold me when I went to the bathroom. You don't know the joy later of going to the bathroom by yourself. Okay? I just held those little simple things on this. I wore that, you can't see the brace, but I wore the brace for 5 months. Okay? 24 hours a day. Okay? My life sucked. All right? My wife had it worse. She thought I was dead when she went to the airport. Okay? And then she slept on the floor and monitored me. She was amazing what she did for me. And she still talks to me. You met her. Yeah. Yeah. She still talks to me. All right? So, okay? I wouldn't have talked to me. I was a pain in the ass. But to say this is why I talk about this, okay? And I'll talk about Josh in a second, is after the crash, the FAA came in and analyzed the snot out of what happened. They analyzed the plane, they analyzed the wind, they analyzed the temperature, looked at the trees, they found security footage from a local highway, they looked at the training of the pilot, they looked at everything about this. They analyzed everything and wrote a 50-page report about what's going on. And as a result of that, because what happened is when we landed nose down in the ground, and we couldn't open the latch. And we're stranded there like this. And all I could think of was, I just, like 3 weeks before, had bought an insurance policy. Life insurance policy, first time in my life, and it hadn't come through yet because they hadn't done the physical exam. I said, damn it, she's not going to get the money. That's all I could think, okay? Because I thought we were waiting, because they didn't get it open, they were worried about it exploding, things like this. And it was things like this. But they came up with it, as a result of this, the FAA has changed training relating to pilots relating to wind shear, and the manufacturer of the plane has changed the design of the plane as a result of this, okay? So when I talk about special education litigation, take a plane crash versus a car crash approach, I got pictures. I got stories. I'm never going up in a little plane like that again. I may be a slow learner, but I learned that, okay? The summer, you saw me on the way back home. My summer, my wife and I flew out to Oregon. We're going to bike across the country, and we wore our bike helmets, because that's what we do. We bike, and I'm getting on the plane, and the steward, it was a big plane. He said, what do you think is going to happen? You think we're going to crash or something? I said, at best, we not have this conversation. But I share this with you, is many of us have been in car crashes. When there's a car crash, what do we typically do? Move the car out of the way so the other cars can pass. We don't analyze the car. We don't analyze the tires. We don't analyze training. We don't analyze what's going on. So that's what we often do with special education litigation, is we take a car crash approach instead of a plane crash approach. And I'm advocating for you to take a plane crash approach, because you need to analyze it so that it doesn't happen to another child. And I very much mean this. So I've been actually doing this, and this is an analogy I've been using for years. I mean, I spoke at NASD a few years ago about this in Louisville. And I talked about this. This is not a new thing for me. It's just my life has been changed, right? So a little less than a year, I had no idea this was going to happen. I was training for a marathon. I did a 15-miler the day before. I was excited. I had a marathon coming up in 2 weeks. I'm really excited. No, I did not do it. I was not out of the hospital. Okay? So let me talk to you about three different kids, 1 boy and 2 girls. Okay? And just explain to you what we do, what I mean by a plane crash versus a car crash approach, so that this works. Okay? First, okay, Josh, 7th grade boy, pretty significant needs relating to learning disabilities. The problem he was having in his 7th grade is that he was being kicked out of his science and social studies class 4 out of every 5 days a week, because he was having significant behavior problems. He was just being kicked out. It was what happened, things like this. So it posed a significant problem for him, and so it affected what's going on. So Josh, at the end of 7th grade, the parents got a lawyer. Okay? Because they're concerned about his behavior problems. This was a district where there were no previous complaints, no previous due process hearings. No complaints whatsoever. And if you're working with a district where there's no complaints or no due process hearings, what does the district typically think? We're good, or our poop don't stink. It's one of those two. Okay? And that's truly what they think, that there's no reason to change. there's no reason to change. So what's happened about this, right? So what would happen is the parents got an attorney, and they were concerned about the behavior issues. So they brought me in because I said, I was free that day, okay? Things like this. And what we looked at, I looked at Josh's information. I looked at the behavior issues and what's going on. But you have to imagine, go broad. And go broad and imagine like throwing a pebble into a lake and about the ripples, how it ripples out. Look at other things it might be affecting as a part of Josh's education. So what I found out with Josh, that when he went from elementary to middle school, there was a dramatic change in services. Though when he was in elementary school, he was getting 2 hours a day of services for language arts. But when he went to middle school, they cured him of a lot of that, and he only needed 45 minutes because that's the way the schedule worked. Okay? And he was still having significant problems relating to language arts. And it posed a significant problem for him because he was not able to read the material that was placed in front of him. And so it manifested in his science and social studies classes. He was not able to read what was being asked for him to read as part of this. Okay? This district also had no real progress monitoring data. What kind of progress monitoring data? None, really. I'll show you some bad progress monitoring data in a few minutes from another district, but no real progress monitoring data, and that posed some problems with this. There was also, clearly his behaviors were getting worse. There was no plan as a part of his IEP to deal with his escalating behavior issues. It was all academics all the time. And so they were just kind of ignoring, not paying attention to what's going on as part of this. Okay? And to make things even better, he had the same exact reading goal for the three previous years. This is actually a time-saving device for you. If you're looking for a time saver, is you can have kids have the same goal. That would save you a lot of time. Okay, so you can write that down. Okay, but that would save just a lot of work on your part. Just keep copying and pasting, copying and pasting. It would save a lot of time. Things like this. Okay, things like this. What's interesting about this? So we found out why was he being kicked out of his science and social studies class? The science teacher would call on the first student in the first row. You read the first sentence. You read the second sentence. You read the third sentence. You read the fourth sentence. You read the fifth sentence. And Josh would figure this out. Like 3 or 4 sentences in front of him, he would yell, kick, scream, throw something to get himself kicked out of class. It was the easiest decision he made that day. Read something poor, get embarrassed, or get kicked out of class. Choosing tater tots or French fries was a harder choice for him at lunch. Okay? And why was it only 4 out of 5 days? On day 5, there was a test. And I don't know if there's a correlation between attending class and doing well in tests. He didn't do well in those tests. Okay? So what do you think about this? What's important about this is we found other boys in the exact same situation. Other boys who had the exact same problem. No real progress monitoring data. Same IEP goals, no real change in things like this. So what we did is we came in and we changed everything. We changed writing the IEP goals. We changed the progress monitoring. We changed reporting the principles, which I'll talk about later. We changed everything because what we wanted to learn was use this as an example so that hopefully Josh had clearly suffered. No dispute Josh had suffered, but we wanted to reduce it so that other kids did not suffer. And other kids did not have problems. So when you're going to hear this statement multiple times during the next part of this section, but I want you to pay attention to this. Special education litigation is not the price of doing business. You need to learn from this. You need to pay attention to this and understand, so what can happen so this doesn't happen to another child. And I wish, and I truly wish, that districts would pay attention to this and learn from this. But districts increasingly, as you are well aware, take a car crash approach to this. They take a car crash approach to this, right? So let me tell you about another kid, Sarah. Hey, 8th grade girl. Okay? I alluded to her yesterday, for those who were in the session yesterday. Her family, eligible as an individual with an intellectual disability. She had 3 siblings, all eligible. They're the ones I think I alluded to, lived in a house about half the size of this room. And they never missed school, and it was one of those parents, and I know you have parents like this. If you were to say, who is the least likely parent to file for a due process hearing, it would have been this parent. Because this is the parent who brought the brownies to the PTA meetings, thank you notes, all sorts of things. This is the parent. Oh, no, this is the parent. Oh, this wonderful parent, things like this. Just kind of happenstance, this parent got hooked up with, not hooked up, that's an inappropriate term, was introduced, hooked up, we'll go with hooked up, got hooked up with an attorney who represents parents in due process hearings, went through the IEPs, and this is what they found about, this is her progress monitoring data, okay? This is progress monitoring data for Sarah on reading, okay? This is her progress monitoring data on reading, okay? And this is over 7 marking periods. She's doing fine. Great. That doesn't tell me where she is. No changes necessary. That's a little better. Things like this. Joy to have in class. That warms my heart. Okay? Works really hard. That's reading. This is reading. Then for 3 periods, three marking periods, they had 1 assessment per marking period. 1 assessment. Okay? And so I asked the district to graph that 1 assessment. So what they did is they dutifully drew an XY axis and said, here, it's right here. And I said, is that going up or down? It's right here. They couldn't tell. Okay? So what's interesting about this? Oh, it gets better. It gets better. So there were significant problems relating to this. Okay? Wait, there's more. So I came and investigated more. The district also had a policy. This is a way to save your district a lot of money. Is none of the kids in the district were ESY eligible. They said, we met, no, not necessary, not needed, things like this. No, none of these kids were ESY eligible, despite the fact that there was no evidence of progress whatsoever. Okay, she's a joy to have in class. How's she doing in reading? She's a joy to have in class. Same goals, bad goals. Similar to Josh, different district, but services were cut from elementary to middle. Services were cut, okay? So this is really interesting about this, is the problems that we had here were replicated across other kids. And it posed a problem because we found out that her siblings, she and her siblings, all had the same IEP goals, despite the fact that one was a 2nd grader and one was a 10th grader. Same exact IEP goals. Okay? They changed the names. They got that going for them. Okay? So what we found out as part of the district, okay, they had bad goals. Okay? Bad goals. They said it had one of my favorite goals of all time. Student will cross the street effectively 80% of the time. Yeah. I'm not making this up. That was the goal. And I asked, what are they going to do the remaining 20%? We teach them to cross effectively. Yeah, anyway. Right? Bad goals, no progress monitoring, inappropriate ESY determinations. So I told the district, you need to deal with all this. They said, no, that's just too much work. We're not going to make any changes. So they made no changes. Okay? That was 2.5 years ago. Last Friday, there were 4 due process hearings filed in that school district. How I know is they called me Monday. So what's going on? We've got some problems because parents are alleging that we didn't provide appropriate ESY. You know what my answer was? Who's the slow learner here, folks? Yeah. I'll probably give like 20 minutes of time on this and we'll settle this because it was inappropriate. So when I talk about this, is special education litigation the price of doing business? It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be the price of doing business, and that's the problem. We need to learn from these things. We need to learn from what's going on. Okay? Wait, I got another one. This is the worst one. Ella. Well, let's see. I can't tell what grade. I should probably figure out what grade she is. Ella's a 6th grade girl. I was a 6th grade girl. She has significant issues relating to ADHD. And she had a very short 504 plan for her ADHD. How short was it? It was less than a page. And the accommodation that she got for her ADHD was she got extended time to take tests. Many of you know that for many of these kids with ADHD is they don't need extended time to take tests because they're often the very first ones to finish. So she was the first one to finish, but that was the only thing that we provided as an accommodation as a part of this. She had failed 5th grade. She had failed 5th grade. It was posed a problem because it was a charter school. And they're some of the best charter schools I've seen in the nation are charter schools. Some of the worst schools in the nation I've seen are charter schools. So I'm not going to generalize about this, but it's just a fact as part of this. It was a charter school, and they had a policy in their 5th grade class that 20% of her grade was based on homework. She would dutifully often do her homework, but she would forget to turn it in. And her grades were not really great otherwise, so just take off 20%, you're knocked down. She had a expedition-sized backpack. She had all of her papers from August through the end of May in her backpack. She couldn't find anything. She had 5 trapper keepers, and she didn't know where anything was, but she knew it was in there. She would then, we'd send notices home. The school would send notices home about IEP meetings with her, and they do it 3 times. Well, we sent 3 notices home. That doesn't count. So things like that. Okay. She failed 5th grade, mostly homework. Failed 6th grade, also because 20% of the grade was homework. And there was nothing being done about this, right? So wait, it gets better, okay? Parents at the end of 6th grade were concerned about the first time. Well, at the end of her first run through 6th grade, were concerned about her failing, and at the end of 6th grade, asked for an evaluation. And the school said, we do not do evaluations at the end of the school year. Okay? This is another cost-saving mechanism for you guys. Think about this. I'm giving you so much cost-saving advice. You didn't think that was going to be, but yeah, here we got it. Okay? Might not pass the 7th grade. Parents, okay? End of the school year. Okay? Here. Well, they're going to at some point, yes. Yeah. She failed 7th grade. At the rate that she's going, what we calculated, she's going to be 32 by the time she graduates. And so this poses a significant problem. She failed 7th grade. Parents, again, requested an evaluation, but they requested it early enough that it could be done through the course of the year, because you don't do evaluations at the end of the year. Requested an evaluation. She was found to have ADHD. Whoa, that's new. That's not new at all. We knew that in 5th grade 17 years ago. Okay? And they wrote the same exact 504 plan that they wrote for her in 5th grade. Parents requested an independent educational evaluation. The school was going to fight it, and I said, you have no leg to stand on here. They got an independent educational evaluation. The independent education evaluation said, oh, hi, my favorite blood type, ADHD and LD. Okay? And so they said needed all sorts of assistance on this. All right? So what's interesting about this, the sad part, is she was also having school anxiety issues. She did not want to go to school anymore because why? They'll tell you. Okay? I got people up here asking questions. I'm responding to them. If you want to ask questions too, that's fine. Does this have a laser? Oh yeah, cool. It's interesting about this. So the school had a policy: if you don't bring your homework, you wear a special orange-colored T-shirt for the day. Oh no! I'm not making this up. I'm not making. I don't need to make up stuff, folks. In fact, I teach my special ed law class for my university. We had people from 9 states this past year, but I teach it. I have to tone my stories down because people don't believe me. Orange T-shirt. She wore it on 176 of the 180 days. Students were making fun of her. They were calling her names. We have no evidence also whether that T-shirt got washed. Okay? What's interesting about this? A review of the district or charter school later, they're still telling parents no evals at the end of the year. They're not individualizing 504 services despite the fact that I gave them the document that I'm giving you guys. And they're all but ignoring private evaluations from parents. So when I talk about the difference between a plane crash versus a car crash approach, the vast majority of districts take a car crash approach to this. And they don't change what's going on. They don't learn from their previous mistakes. Because one of the things we need to think about is this, and those of you who are the esteemed individuals earning the big bucks as special ed directors, we need you to be the representative back to the school district and provide the supports. Because one thing we have to do is about this is, again, special education litigation is not the price of doing business. Okay? But the one thing, because when some of these, I've been involved in some pretty massive cases. I was involved, the $30 million settlement. I was one of the expert witnesses in the Flint, Michigan case. There were three of us. And I'm heavily involved in some cases in Minnesota, Ohio, and Delaware right now. We're settling for hundreds of thousands of dollars, things like this. I know most of your districts have extra hundreds of thousands of dollars laying around, so it's not a big issue. But for those of you who work in districts that do not have hundreds of thousands of dollars laying around, you need to make sure that you take steps that say to your board that you're less likely to have litigation next year than you are this year. That you've taken affirmative steps so that things are going to change. That you've improved, that you change what's going on with the steps, the model, the information, the training, the monitoring. You've changed all these different steps so that this is less likely. If you can, I can't reduce. We can't. I truly wish. I apologize for this. I truly wish that we wouldn't have to have a special ed law conference. I really truly wish this. That we all just did what we're supposed to be doing, that kids that got the services, that everything was good and everything's above board and everything's just fine. The reality of the situation is we need to have special ed law conferences because we are a field defined by a law. Especially kids with disabilities clearly existed. Some of you, I told you this yesterday. My brother-in-law, who's about 5 years, 6 years older than me, was only allowed he has profound intellectual disabilities. He needs help toileting. He needs help getting dressed. He's nonverbal. He knows 10 signs, of which 8 relate to going to McDonald's right now. You'd be surprised how many golden arches are along the highways when we drive him. You think he's asleep? No, they're sending out messages to him. Sydney, there's coming. Oh, something coming. Things like this. He doesn't need help eating. He has Prader-Willi syndrome. Actually, he needs help not eating. Yeah, that's the fun one. You'd be surprised what you need. But I talk about this. When we talk about this, you need to think about, there are kids, he was only allowed to go to school for 1 year when he was 18 years of age because it was legal to prevent him from going to school. My in-laws paid for him to go to a private school 2 days a week. It was legal. So when we talk about this, it's still within some of these individuals' lifetimes that we work with. So keep this in mind. The next one, and this is a video that, this is an NBC News video, because I'm going to show this to you. And it sounds, you're not going to hear it, don't worry, you pay attention, things like this. I was involved in a case with almost the exact same fact pattern, with the exact same closed caption TV video. I can't show you that because we don't want it to be released to the public, but this was on NBC News. So I'm going to show this to you, then talk about this, all right?
This is a video Angel Nelson saw of her 9-year-old son, Alan, dragged down a hallway by his teacher. I was in shock, and I was very traumatized for this to happen in front of all of his classmates. The family's attorney subpoenaed the video after being told what happened. Nelson says Alan, who has autism, suffered a sprained wrist in the incident last October. He had an outburst, and they were trying to remove him from the classroom, but she restrained him the wrong way. In a statement, the Greenup School District says it followed established safety protocol as soon as the situation became known. The teacher was removed from the school. The teacher is expected to be charged with 4th-degree assault tomorrow morning as the family now tries to heal, hoping no other parent have to see something like this. And I never want this to happen to another child, ever. Kristen Dahlgren, NBC News.
Okay, I'm not going to stand up here and defend that child as being a great little kid. I'm not, okay? But no kid should be dragged down the hall, all right? If you learn nothing else today, write that down, okay? Put it across your forehead, whatever, on your mirror, things like that. Do not drag kids down the hall, all right? We'll let that sink in. All right, now let's move on. That teacher that I was involved in did almost the exact same thing. Dragged a kid, but she was using 2 arms. It was a slightly bigger kid, dragging him down to the point where he dragged down the hall that they wore through his, you could see the scars on his knees. He had a serious bruising, almost cutting on his knees, because she took him over a transom and scraped his knees pretty severely. Okay? So I was brought in to figure out what happened. Take the car crash approach to this. Okay? Immediately we blame the teacher. Okay? Let me give you some facts. And there's something, the one I was involved in, it was a newly hired emergency certified teacher. This is a person who had a history degree, graduated in May the previous year, was hired the middle of July, had never taken an education course, much less a special education course, and was hired to start just a few weeks later. Okay? A great person, very strong, very smart, things like this. Okay? And started a special education online certification program. Most online special education certification programs we have for teachers, we don't want to overwhelm them, so we require them to take 9 credits a year. Okay? Typically, it's a class in the fall, class in the spring, class in the summer, things like this. And the first class we typically have them take is the Intro to Special Ed course, or as taught in many universities as Disability of the Week. Okay? And it's an important class. We need to learn this kind of intro stuff. The students, when I teach it, they would like to spend half the time on kids who are deaf, half the time on kids who are blind, and half the time on the third half on kids who have physical disabilities. Okay? I did the math. I got it. Don't worry. Math actually is my forte, or 5T. But what's interesting about this is I can do these things like that, but it's an interesting part of this process. I spend hardly any time on the low incidence disabilities when I talk about it. But this was the person had just started their new program. Okay? There were 10 students in this class, all with pretty significant behavior problems. Am I giving you a fact pattern that is probably consistent with many of you might experience? Yeah, I can see the nightmares coming. Okay? There was an aide who was a very, very good aide who had been assigned to the class, but she had gotten really sick, and after day 3 of the school year had stopped coming because she was really sick. And the district had a policy is they couldn't find replacement aides, so we don't hire replacement or substitute aides. You just deal. So this class started the first part of August. It was now middle of October, and that's when the teacher dragged the kid down the hall. The aide had been gone since middle of August. Okay, so we have these things. Keep this in mind. All right. Okay. The students' behaviors. The students' behaviors were getting worse. As you might think, you've got a teacher who's not understanding what's going on, paying attention and without supports, things like this, students' behaviors were getting worse. Wait. The teacher kept going to the principal and asking for help. I need help. I need help. Please, 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 just give me some help. Okay? The principal refused to come because what did the principal say? If I come, I'm going to have a lot of paperwork to do, and I don't have that kind of time. We set up a teacher for failure. So what we did in that district is we changed the policy of how we hire, how we staff, and how we train. And we also we slapped the principal's wrist. That's all we could do because the principal's married to the superintendent's daughter. Okay, that's also that. You want job security? Marry the superintendent's daughter. That's my advice to you. All right, things like this. Okay? Or like I was the son of the superintendent. I got away with murder in high school. It was almost, not quite, but I didn't quite do murder. But I did skip school to go surfing. I lived in Virginia Beach. That's what you do. I know you don't go do a lot of surfing here, but I lived in Virginia Beach. The waves aren't very good, but we pretended. But I talk about this, is we changed the whole procedures as a part of this, because we had set up a teacher for failure. Think about a car crash approach, get rid of the teacher. That's easy. Do it again. Car crash approach, do it again, things like this. Take a plane crash approach, learn from what's going on. Take a plane crash approach and understand what's going on as a part of this, so that you cannot repeat the same thing and be part of a vicious cycle that repeats over and over, repeatedly, over again, redundantly. Because most districts, they would just hire another para or teacher and just bring that same emergency certified person in, start the process over again and say, oh, well, we tried, we did what we could. Keep this in mind. So special education litigation is not the price of doing business. I can't emphasize this enough. Learn from these kinds of things. And I'll talk to you about a process of how to pay attention to this in a minute. But there are 4 steps that I really want you to pay attention to as a part of this. 4 steps as we go through this. 4 things to keep in mind as you are thinking about this as part of this. The first one is, remember these key phrases, okay? Based on a student's need and potential for growth. Yesterday, I kind of frustrated some people, but I hope they understand about this. When I said, I'm not so concerned about a child's disability label. The disability label is a gatekeep. Get the kid in the door. What drives things for me is the child's needs, because that dictates the program and the placement for the kids. Yeah, because the need, because I get all these parents out there, I need special autism services. Autism is a huge umbrella with many, many kids underneath it. With a variety of different things. There's not one thing that works with all kids. So you need to think about the needs of the child. That dictates everything. Parents, labels are and I applaud, and I appreciate this. Right? I appreciate this. For some parents, it is a fighting issue. It's not a fighting issue for me. So as I was driving out here on Monday, school district, the parents said, the director of special education, the kid is intellectual, has 62 IQ, poor social skills. Parents refuse to have the kid labeled as intellectually disabled, but they'll accept LD. I said, yeah, so what are we fighting over? Well, what box do I check? In the door, LD. I don't just get him in the door. The needs dictate the services. So he would get the same exact reading program, the same exact math program. Parents just say that once they heard it was an LD reading program, they were okay with it. Second thing, challenging, ambitious, measurable goals. Measurable. And I said this yesterday, if you can't measure it, it don't count. I appreciate the pun in that one. Okay? But you need to be able to count these things, measure these things, and make sure that they're challenging and ambitious. The Ender Supreme Court case, if you read the decision from Chief Justice Roberts, it talks about this. I could teach you all. You all could probably write an IEP goal that a kid would master in like 2 hours. Okay? I don't think that meets the spirit or intention of the law. It meets a letter, but the spirit of the law, I don't think at all. So we have to think about challenging these kids so that you're pushing them forward and challenging them and challenging them. Next, progress appropriate in light of a student's circumstances. So we're pushing the kids and the kid is making progress. That is our goal. We want the kid to make progress. We want the kid to continue to do more. The reality of the situation is not all kids make the same amount of progress. There were some people, as part of when Ender was appealed to the Supreme Court, they wanted the Supreme Court to come up with a formula where kids with 85 IQs would make this amount of progress and kids with 115 IQs would make this amount of progress. But I bet each and every one of you know kids with different IQs, that's not how it works. Okay? One of my best students ever was a kid with an IQ of like 81, 82. He would take work home on weekends. He'd read extra on the bus. There was times, and he was in fifth grade, he came in, can I come in from recess early to come do extra reading with you? I remember that because he was the only kid who ever did that. Okay? And I had a kid in the same classroom with an IQ of about 140. 138. I'll round up. Things like this. He hated reading. He didn't want to do reading. He was actually a pretty good reader. He just, I don't want to do it. And he'd sit there and pick his nose instead. Okay? Ask him to do homework? No, that's never going to happen. So when you have to think about this, there's not an easy way to do this. But we need to make it search challenging for the kids. So the Supreme Court did not give us a formula, but they gave us a way to try to perceive this. Okay? And the last one, internal consistency. I do IEP reviews for districts. They'll email me the IEPs on Thursday, and by Sunday night, I'll send them back a review, and Monday morning we have the meeting about whether we should move forward or settle on the case, kinds of things like this. And the first thing I do is when I read the IEP is I go to the present level section and I list off all the needs. And then I make sure all those needs are somehow addressed in the IEP. If they're not addressed, then that's an easy fix. We'll settle that sucker. Things like that typically. And then I go backwards and make sure for every goal that there's a need. It's a two-way street, kinds of things like this. But make sure that it's internally consistent, because I can't tell you how many times I see IEPs of kids who have all sorts of behavior problems, and there's nothing in the IEP addressing the behavior issues. And so you have to make sure that when we talk about it, it's present levels of academic achievement and functional performance. Plaf! Sorry, did I spit? Okay, I'll stand back this time. But functional performance. Not just academics. And we continue to get the information on these and pay attention to this. Remind your team of getting data on functional performance and behaviors. More data on this, because it's too many. Almost all the due process hearings I was involved in last year, all 85, the vast majority of them, I'd say 63 to 64 of them, were kids with behavior problems. Right? A vast majority, or maybe closer to 70, were kids with behavior problems. Significant behavior problems, and we often did not have data on the child's functional performance. We had no data on the child's, how many times the kid was out of the seat, how many times the kid went to the principal's office, how many times the kid was referred, how many times the kid shouted out, how many times the kid hit someone else. We had no data on that. We just knew the kid was bad. Spelled B-A-D. It's an abbreviation. So when we talk about this, is you need data. You need data on this, and we need to focus on this. Okay? So the next thing, I know Mitch uses the same slide, but I'm using it too, but I like this because my mom used to babysit Kathy Mayfield's kids when my mom was growing up. Okay? My mom grew up in Richmond, Virginia. That's where Kathy Mayfield just recently retired. But I share this with you this is the mantra that I have. I truly have this mantra. When I have a school district with a FAPE case, the first thing I'd ask the teacher is give me the information on the student's progress. If the teacher doesn't have data, I advise the district to settle. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate that, because some of these files that I get on Thursdays the technical term is massive. And if I go through the quick files and I see real quickly by Thursday afternoon there's no data, I've got a free Friday, Saturday, and Sunday because I don't have to review anything else. We're not going to fight this. It makes no sense. It makes no sense. It's better for us to work together as a team on Monday at what can we do to repair the damage that has been done, instead of saying we should draw lines in the sand and fight these things. So keep this in mind. I need data. You need data. It's better for you. It's better for the kids. And it helps us inform things. So keep that in mind as we talk about this. Okay? So I'm going to walk you through a 6-step process. I'm going to walk you through the 6-step process on dealing with complaints, and how to address complaints and how to address and pay attention to this. Okay? And what I just walk you through this process, because this is the process that I use. Take this back to your team and use this, and hopefully this will benefit you. Adapt to things like this. This is a process that I did not come up with. It's used by individuals in the insurance industry. It's used by individuals in other different industries who use this same kind of thing. It's often referred to as root cause analysis, to try to figure out what's going on. So if you use the Google and type in root cause analysis of problems, it's the same kind of process, but we need to do that. I just adapted it to plane crashes versus car crash. Okay? And I was using the plane crash versus car crash approach before. I think it was Vox Media even put out a video on how we need to do how the medical industry uses now a plane crash versus car crash approach on this. So I was first on things like this. Okay? So first, learn about the complaint. Learn everything about the complaint. And what's interesting about this is often parents don't know, they know something's wrong, that things aren't working, but they don't know what. So when you get the initial complaint, it may be about something over here, but they don't know all the other things that are going on over here. Use the ripple in the lake analogy that I gave you earlier. Look at all the different things out there that might be part of this child's education to determine what's going on with this child. Use this to determine things what's going on, because you are the ones in the classroom. Parents are not in the classroom. They can't observe what's going on. They don't know what the issue is or not. Look at all the different things. So learn about the complaint. Learn what they're complaining about, and look at all the other aspects of that child's education. Okay? So when to go back, use Josh as an example from earlier. Parents were complaining about the kid he's being kicked out of his classroom 4 out of 5 days a week. Yeah, rightfully concerned they were issued about that. But if pay attention to this, we looked at the fact that now, between elementary and middle school, we're making determinations about what the services need as the kids transition from elementary to middle school. Do they still need that 2 hours a day? If so, they're going to continue to get that. If they don't, then we now have documentation about they don't need this. And make it appropriately based on informed decisions as opposed to it fits the schedule better. So make sure you learn about the complaint. Read broadly about this, because truly, parents don't know what's going on. They don't understand where we are with the complaint. They don't understand where we are with this and what's going, things like this. Okay? Second, does this apply to other children? So maybe the other kids aren't suffering as much, but you want to stem the hemorrhage. You want to stem the hemorrhage as quickly as possible. So Josh suffered, but there's other kids also who are starting to suffer. You want to prevent them from suffering. And you want to learn what's going on as a part of this. Because I'm willing to bet that if you have a problem with a paraprofessional, that paraprofessional may have had other issues with other kids. Because it was right in the pre-times. I remember this real specifically. Paraprofessional, very good on the whole, but when the kindergarten kids would sit on the mat, there was one girl who had the wiggles. I'm not going to demonstrate, but she had the wiggles. Things like this. And she would sit there and wiggle, so the paraprofessional would make the girl sit on the paraprofessional's lap, and she would, as the girl wiggled, she would wrap her arms tighter and tighter around the girl. And the girl did not like this. And the girl would wiggle out and then run. And she was a good runner. I'm looking to see what she does in the 4x8 in the future. But it's interesting about this. She was a very good runner, but things like this. But we blame the girl. We blame the girl. Okay? If you have the wiggles, I'm not sure if you want to be squeezed. Okay? I'm not going to do this. That's not a service I will provide for you. All right? That's going to have to be someone else who's going to do that for you. But so we think about this. But that paraprofessional was doing that to other kids in other classrooms. We followed her around. We found out that she was causing problems. So we mandated that she stop squeezing kids hard. It fixed a lot of things. Not like I recently did to my cat, but it fixed some things. Okay, so what's interesting about this is we have to think about this stop with your interruptions. Okay, I got a whole bunch more to happen. Okay, why did this happen? Okay, Gail. All right, so why did this happen? What is it because this person is newly certified? Is it what's going on? Use the analogy that I gave you from that video. And think about, is it due to lack of training, due to lack of supports? What's going on about this? Use analyze what's going on as about this. Because go back to that video, short video I showed you. If we just hire another emergency certified teacher, not provide her appropriate supports, not provide her appropriate training, you'd probably be in the same thing over and over again. So kind of pay attention to this and pay attention to where we are with this. Okay? Wait, there's more. Okay. Is training necessary? Is training necessary? Stop. It's not a mic. That's it. Is training necessary? There's some individuals who need training. That's where those IRIS modules will come in invaluable to you. And they're all free. There's a wealth of information on there. And they've vetted them. They've gone through extensive work on these things like this. They make sure that they're updated. And so every couple of years they close them out and make sure you get a new one on this. Truly, it's good information. You don't need to hire outside people to do these trainings. You can save your district a ton of money by using professional development from the IRIS Center. And increasingly, as we've gone to the Zoom machine, it's easier. People are easier to do modules, kinds of things like this. Use those. But I do a lot of training for principals. I wrote that book for principals a few years ago about what they need to know about special education, and it's wildly popular. It's sad, but it's interesting about this. So I do training. One thing that I do for principals, okay, is I change how they deal with their teachers. So is change necessary? Is change necessary? Do you need to change what's going on? So let me tell you what I do with some principals. And Josh's school district actually. Is what we did is we mandated that, and what I'm going to say takes longer to say than what it actually is to do, is that all principals have to meet with all special education teachers within their building every marking period to determine whether the kids are making progress on their goals. So if a principal has 4 special education teachers in their building, the principal has to meet with all 4 teachers and go through every kid on that teacher's roster and go through every goal that those kids have. And what I'm saying sounds large and long. It's not. It's not. It's not a make-work thing for the teachers because teachers have to report on the child's progress anyway. See, the teachers are already doing that. It's not additional work for the teacher. There's no PowerPoint involved. There's no additional kinds of things like this. It's good for them. So I modeled it for this. And what do? Bring in the teacher, go through kid 1. Not his real name, but kid 1. Okay? Kid 1, how's he doing on his first goal? He's doing okay? Things going well? All right, that's good. Goal 2, how's he doing? Seems to be good. We're making progress, things like goal 3. We haven't attempted goal 3 yet, but we're going to get that the next marking period. Anything else I need to know about kid 1? Again, not his real name. Anything else we need to know? No, things are making pretty good progress. All right? Let's move on to kid 2. Do the same thing. Kid 3, kid 4. If we find a kid through that process who's not making progress on their goals, we then defer for an IEP meeting the following week on what we can do to change what's going on. The district started doing this, and they were able to say to that school board that we've stemmed the cut and what's going on, and we've reduced the likelihood of special education litigation. All principals in this district, there's 15 principals in this district, do this every single marking period. And by marking period 3, they were expecting information on certain kids. They were ready. They'd see the kids in the hall, say, how's that reading going? They'd see parents in the parking lot, and they understood what was going on. Once you get through the repetitive motion, they knew what to ask. It became standard practice of what's going on. They hired a new principal middle of the term, showed him the process. He said, oh, this is going to be a lot of work. It's not, but it's a way to check what's going on. So pay attention. There's steps that you can take, okay? But make sure. What can be done to make sure this never happens to another child? I've used this phrase multiple times in the past 2 days, okay? It's weird being face-to-face. This is kind of fun. I'm getting used to it, okay? I hope we stay this way. It's interesting about this is these kids have disabilities at no fault of their own. And we need to do everything we can to improve their lives so that they don't continue to suffer, that they don't continue to have problems. So we need to pay attention to that, and we need to make sure that's part of the process, okay? So this phrase that I've said multiple times, over and over again repeatedly, hopefully it's going to change the way you think about things. Because I truly think we can learn from this. You need to learn about every complaint. Some nasty emails, but all litigation. We need to learn from this. Because you want to be able to say to your school board when you report on things, you're less likely to have litigation this year than last year. Okay? So if you can follow this, if you can make these statements, you can improve services for your district. What I've been telling you is it's good for litigation, but it's really good for kids. It's really good for kids, and that's really what we're after, is improving the lives of kids and making sure that these kids don't continue to suffer and the problems that we have with one kid don't magnify out to other kids. Because those 3 horror stories I told you about, okay, so I changed the color. It was originally a green shirt, but it's not orange. Okay, so I did change that. But it was interesting about this is, yes, they did wear shirts. Okay? 3 kids, their lives changed dramatically. Learn from these kids. Learn from this and learn from mistakes. Okay? We have, I think we have 15 minutes for questions.
No.
Okay? Any questions you guys have? Shut up. My promise to you. You have my email address. If you think of a question next week, or if any of those documents that I've referenced do not work for you, do not hesitate to reach out to me. I'll do everything I can to get you timely information to answer the questions that help you provide services. I truly do. I applaud you. I seriously, my family is in the education. Education is what we do. I stand in front of you as a proud educator. And I appreciate what you're doing to provide services for kids. So thank you very much. Okay?